This morning you announced a partnership with a company called Dragos, which is cybersecurity.
That's right.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? I guess I'm also curious, sort of the old adage about buy or build. It seems like you've went to partner rather than buy or build. Just a little bit about why you made that choice.
Yeah, so if you look at the industrial control systems, or what is known as operational technology environments like electric grid, those environments are subject to attacks, cyber attacks, right? Increasingly from east-west attacks, those called. That means those originate within the system that get compromised. So we are a leader in providing security solutions like firewalls. We provide cloud-based security director and all that. Whereas Dragos is a leader in providing threat intelligence. So if we can get the threat intelligence from them in real time, then we can react in near real time to all the cyber attacks and protect the environment. So that's the value proposition. That's why we are partnering with.
What customers are sort of asking for that?
Oh, many customers. As I told you, the energy grid in this country is very vulnerable. Lots of industrial control systems in factory automation and all, they are also vulnerable to that. Traditionally, they were air gap systems. That means they are separated from the rest of the infrastructure, but that's not true because of internet now. So those systems are increasingly vulnerable to attacks from all kinds of things. Those attacks come from within. That's a real challenge.
So you're traditionally known as you've been kind of a customer, or sorry, a company that's worked with the telco industry. It sounds like when you joined around 2019, you made quite a pivot. There was an acquisition of an AI company called Mist. You moved into services and enterprise. Talk to me a little bit about why, what's like been the biggest challenge for that so far.
So I think Juniper traditionally was a service provider company. People may not know, approximately about 60% of the traffic that you see on the internet goes to Juniper devices and systems. But the service provider market has been flattening or declining. So the transition we made to public cloud providers as well as enterprise started with that. So we have acquired multiple companies starting with Mist, then Apstra, then 128T. The idea is to be able to offer both software and systems to enterprise customers so we can increase that revenue.
Yeah, could you give some examples of where that pairing has worked well for you?
Multiple places. For one example is most of the enterprises manage Wi-Fi networks manually using network operation centers on-prem, right? And that is very labor intensive and very slow in terms of being able to detect the problems and reacting to them. So what Mist brought is that they're the first company to do cloud managed Wi-Fi network management, which allows them to collect data from all the devices, from the iPhone, phone, iPad, MacBook, any of the devices, access points. All that data gets fed to machine learning model, and machine learning models correlate and self-diagnose. So you can go and start correcting the problems before they start showing up as alerts in some network operation center. So it reduces the amount of manual intervention in the network by a tremendous amount. Some of our customers, for example, have one of the largest retailers has stated that their troubleshooting tickets went down by 90%. So we call it self-driving network. It tries to self-resolve the problems.
What was that? 90% over what?
The troubleshooting tickets that used to resolve manually, now they're getting self-resolved by the...
Over like a year-on-year?
Yeah, for 3-year period,
Yeah. And so, are you seeing this in retail as one, or are there other industries that...
Retail, healthcare, education, lots of universities are using our products. More and more we are beginning to see the federal accounts also beginning to see that. That's one example. The same thing with data center. We acquired a company called Apstra that does closed loop automation of network fabrics in data center, where the idea is to build a model of the network in prior before deploying the network. And then you constantly monitor it to check against the model. And if you see any diversion from the model, you try to correct it.
So what's changed starting in March 2020, and then how
yeah, what changed is I think COVID, they're good and bad. I think the good thing is the demand increased because a lot of people started working from home. So service providers started ordering more equipment. We saw a lot more demand for hybrid workforce, which means the broadband connectivity to home became more mission critical, required more security. So we have seen a lot more increase in both enterprise sales as well as service provider side.
What's been the biggest challenge for you think, on the technical side as for the pandemic?
I think the biggest challenge has been that when this hybrid workforce happened, you want to deliver the same experience to the home worker that you do to the office worker.
Yeah.
So it's no longer the hub and spoke model. You know that the campus is the hub and the spokes. Everything became distributed. So that so scale has to increase. So I think anything we do in terms of automation helps there.
Hmm. So I mean, you manage a team. I bet you probably can't share how big the team is of engineers, but
So my role is as a chief technology officer to drive new products, new technology strategies. So my team is not more than 300 people, but the engineering team is much larger. So I work closely with them. Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious how you think about the trade-offs and sort of if you think about it as a trade-off, I'm sure it is, and sort of the traditional networking business, and then some of the advances you're doing on AI and software. Like, how do you measure that and allocate
Yeah,
resources?
I think the skill set modernization is the one of the challenges, right? Because we have to bring more people with experience in cloud native architectures, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and that's a transition we have been making both organically as well as inorganically.
Yeah. You mentioned the cloud. The big hyperscale cloud companies are customers.
Yes.
They're also, all of them, in Amazon, Microsoft, Google, are sort of building their own custom silicon or talking about it, and sort of investing and sort of owning, I'm using vertical jargon here, but like vertical, they're owning a lot more of everything. How does that change things for your business?
So I think where people are trying to build chips is, in my opinion, commodity market, which is a very well-defined function. Where we are focused on developing custom chips, which are very energy efficient. I mean, generation to generation, we reduce the energy consumption of our routers by 30 to 40%.
Sorry,
30 to 40% by
the-
using custom chips, which are designed to be very highly performant, but also very energy efficient.
What's the trade-off there?
So I think when we build the product, if we use those chips, we control our destiny, right? We are not only providing performance, we can provide the highest possibility of the performance allowed by the technology curve. And those products we sell to hyperscalers today. They are not building those themselves. They're buying from us.
I see. What keeps them from building that tomorrow?
I think eventually everyone will tries to go up the technology curve, and our opportunity is to stay ahead of it. As long as we stay ahead of it, they will not catch up.
Got it. I was talking to my colleague who covers your industry more closely and said, well, Cisco is saying kind of the same thing. I guess I'm curious what you think, and I'm sure that not just Cisco, but all the competitors are moving in this direction. Like, how do you stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, so I think some companies have been traditionally focused on enterprise market. So for us, that's a focus shift that we have made, and we're trying to take advantage of our high-end products and bring them to the enterprises so that we can not only grow, but grow with differentiation, both in software and hardware systems. That's the strategy we are following. Yeah.
Supply chains kind of out of whack. What does that mean for you?
So I think whole industry is facing supply chain, but so far we have been able to manage efficiency of the supply chain by diversifying as much as possible. So immediately we do see that we'll continue to meet our demand, but our backlog continues to increase, which is good and bad for future. But I think so far so good.
And you also, I saw in the most recent earnings, it seems like you're hiring, which just seemed to be the opposite trend of a lot of companies around here.
Yes.
What's your outlook on sort of how long that lasts? Is this?
So we are hiring in two places. Like I said, in R&D, we need to hire for new skill sets like cloud native architecture, artificial intelligence, machine learning. That will continue. But also we are modernizing our sales force by hiring more in enterprise sales force. So because of our focus on sales force. As long as our growth continues, we'll continue that path, I think.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to just make sure this, like the self-driving self-driving network for a quick second. Like, what are you seeing the sort of customers that where are you seeing, like, is it sort of your existing customers that are moving to this? Is it new customers that you've never had before?
When it comes to self-driving networks, especially in the case of Mystery One, we have taken the strategy to apply that principle to Wi-Fi networks, access, like security access and all, as well as campus branch. For that, we are seeing new customers. because this is a completely new approach where we are displacing traditional vendors who are doing manual intervention driven network operations to automation. So that's completely new, and that's where the growth is coming from. Yeah.
How do you stay up on the latest in AI? And I know that hiring is clearly like a huge challenge. Like everyone's trying to hire AI engineers.
Two ways. One is that inside Juniper, we created what we call Juniper University, where we brought the experts to start building curriculum to retrain our engineers. And secondly, we focus on hiring new college graduates, because if you catch them young and early, you can develop them into more expert.
Not like poaching from DeepMind or something like that.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah. And but that's a better strategy. You think there's like
I think the better strategy is to invest for long term. So I think Juniper University is a good way to retrain our engineers who are hungry to learn new skills and get the new college graduates.
Yeah. Quick one before we jump to Q&A, because I'm reluctant. I'm not an expert in like Web3 and blockchain, but I'm sure you're thinking about it.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? What's the how much time do you spend thinking about it?
So I think that's one of my areas, is that what comes next 3 to 5 years we have to worry about it. So Web3, there's also a lot of hype around it, but of course the underlying technology, so-called distributed ledger, is worthwhile. It's going to allow us to secure supply chains and other parts. So that's what we're looking at, how to apply it to the places where it's designed to be. But not necessarily go by the NFT and cryptocurrency route.
Got it. Okay. We didn't prepare for my poor eyesight. First one is, how are you trying to solve the cybersecurity talent gap with automation? I'm not as familiar with the cybersecurity talent gap, but I imagine you know what that means.
I think talent gap, I think they're referring to, is that hiring people with security expertise is also hard, because there are only RSA conference right now is full of them. You can go steal some of them, but I think the question really leads me to the same answer, right? That by putting more automation, like the example of Dragos and Juniper partnering today, where we taking the threat intelligence, feeding that into machine learning models so that we can do threat protection, that doesn't require as many security experts that we would normally.
Yeah. The next one's really interesting and kind of a two-part, I think. So the expansion of the remote workforce and a lot more Wi-Fi connections and devices. One, I guess, what does that mean for cybersecurity? And two, and maybe, well, I don't know if it's more important, but what does it mean for network reliability?
Yeah.
And what have you seen so far?
So I think that's what, with hybrid work model, what happened was the home became as much a mission critical part of the network as your office. So you have to take the technologies like SD-WAN and also make them available for home usage. So what we have done with the 120T acquisition, we combined our security portfolio with SD-WAN so that for branch offices, home offices, we can provide secure access.
Mm-hmm. And that, like, do you feel like it's straining? Like, how much can you give a sense about like the strain? Is it sort of like continuing to strain, or has it kind of reached?
I think it's not a strain for us. It's a clearly growth opportunity for us. But I think the strain, if you use the traditional methods of network operations. If you're going to have a bunch of people sitting at a network operations center, watching monitors, getting audio, visual alerts, that's not going to scale. Yeah. So by using this AI-driven, self-driving network approach, we believe that we make the problem simpler and you can tackle it very easily.
This next question is really interesting, actually. What do you think about open source AI-driven network monitoring solutions? The example was sort of like if there is, and maybe it exists, I don't know, but a TensorFlow for network security would that come out from Juniper?
Yeah, so first of all, the open source solutions are not a threat. Mm-hmm. I really like the open source ecosystem because it allows us to contribute, but also take from the contributions of the other.
And have you been?
We have been very actively participating in open source. But what we'd like to do is somebody has to take that solution, harden it, make it accessible and usable by customers. That's what we can do. So I think we can take advantage of the open source in both ways, contribute, but take it.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me a sense about how much you're contributing now to?
So for example, it's the Kubernetes is one of the most underlying cloud native networking architecture from Google. Google put in open source. We are active contributors to that. We now have our own Kubernetes based cloud networking solution that we make it available to others.
Jumping off from Web3 speculation to quantum computing speculation. What worries do you have in a potential quantum future about security and encryption?
Yeah, so the quantum computing, one of the things we have done, and this is public information, we started using it for quantum key distribution. In a secure channel, you need a key distribution, and quantum computing allows us to make it more secure. The question refers to what happens if you start using quantum computers to decrypt the data by storing it. I think there are more so-called post-quantum encryption algorithms already being developed in academia, and we are looking at some of those to collaborate with academia to evolve those. So by the time the quantum computing starts getting applied to a traditional encryption, we should be in the post-quantum era with respect to encryption.
You should be this.
In the post-quantum era with respect to encryption algorithms and so on.
Got it.
Because right now, I think the problem is the following, right?
Yeah.
If you take any of the encrypted data, store it, and feed it to the quantum computers, maybe a day later, you will have it unencrypted. So that's a big threat to the traditional encryption algorithms.
Yeah.
So people are developing so-called post-quantum encryption algorithms, which will not be decryptable by quantum computers. That's where we have to go.
How much? I'm a quantum skeptic a little bit, but because people have been talking about it for a long time. But how much of your time do you spend thinking about that?
So we have done one sort of pathfinding project, early POC, where we tried to use it for key distribution. That seems to work. We are working with the UK's Department of Defense to try it out.
Oh, wow, fast.
So it's very early. It's early, but we have to explore that before the things get there.
Yeah. All right. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Raj, for your time. Thank you, everyone, for very excellent questions. And I'm going to turn it back over to Janet.